You know, it is written in scripture that before you were born, before you even thought of God, He knew every thought that would run through your mind and when. And if Emmanuel means God with us, and considering consciousness, which is the light of a man, imagine if somebody was able to transcend time and his spirit can govern your thoughts. And in that government, in which you have a sound mind and good wisdom, therefore good reason and good knowledge, with every self-imposed action that pertains to a different reason than the reason that God gave you, what if you lost a bit of that? The ability to perceive or hear those things. And then you do other things to cover up other things, and those things are like karma. And though you don't see it in the physical, it affects you psychologically. And even your knowledge. And knowledge, which gives you some form of direction and a way, a little bit more and a little bit more goes away because the light is hid with Christ. And Christ said, not my will, but thy will. So therefore, if you be the bride, wouldn't you go accordingly to a will that is not the same as your own? And each self-imposed decision, though you have free will, it comes with a consequence in which your mind is a little more dark and a lot less light, seeking the things that you seek out of your desires upon your belly. And like I said, pertaining to spiritual warfare is this. If I am the weaker opponent and outnumbered also, then I can consider the endurance given a weakness to an opposition, and if his endurance can supersede his own weakness, that would break down the opposition into individuals, which then drop off like droplets of water. It is good to have knowledge, indeed. But the knowledge of men is evil compared to wisdom that come from God. And if one is imposed the temptation of his own mind, being deluded of his own mind and tempted of his own mind, according to the spirits that go according to appetites, then these are decisions that take place in the mind. And the more one leans to one side, then they lose the wisdom and the light. And they live in the shadows. Even though they work a 9 to 5. In all of their ways, their actions and behaviors, you could see their mannerisms and link them to different attributes of animals out in nature and know the spirit of a person. This is why I communicate, and I communicate responsibly. I listen actively. This world has a lot of manipulation, so I have to know how to manipulate so I can know if I'm being manipulated. Understand? It does not mean I'm a manipulator. Out of occlusion, there is warfare. Meaning, I have to know some things that are evil to keep them things from being used on me rather than use them. You see how intricate these things happen, even though all things were solved on the cross. I got to deal with the knowledge of the people, which directs their ways, and their ways are in opposition to the wisdom in my head. And see, that makes room for many arguments since I know the truth, and I got to stand on 10 toes. No one's got my back. So, imagine dying by the drop, and the mind leaning to its own brightness of reason and understanding, and the brightness being the temptation of the appetites, which saturate the flesh. And the flesh has this leaning on the brain, which is of flesh. But the mind, which is of the heart, has morals and ethics and standards and so on. A law and a code and a way. This goes beyond black and white spaces. And if you lose that light, the only light that you have, or move further away to your own will instead of God's, then you just lose a little more light and a little more light. And it happens a little at a time that you are comfortable with losing just a little, until you have a little light, and that light then is no more. How would you know the difference between light and dark, given discernment between good and evil? If we speak of spiritual things, there goes your knowledge. It's rudimentary and categorical. It has nothing to do with the metaphysical linking into the spiritual of the difference between wisdom and ignorance, and the scales of your mind, which supersede all your thoughts and directions of all times and places. So always work to have a relationship with God so you don't lose that light. Peace and blessings be with you all.